Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Welcome to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. Glad to have you with me. We have a very special guest on today's program, Michelle Malkin. You probably know Michelle. She's a wife, mother, American conservative blogger, a syndicated columnist, a political commentator, and a #1 New York Times best-selling author. Michelle started her career back in 1992 as a columnist for the Los Angeles Daily News, after which she moved to the Competitive Enterprise Institute, the Seattle Times, but you probably know her best for her appearances on Fox News, for her founding of Hot Air, the political website, and for Twitchy. Those of us who use Twitter a lot know that Twitchy is a valuable source for people that go back and trace some of the really stupid things that people have said. Twitchy finds those, and they find the best responses to it, and they put it all in one place. And I think I just love Michelle for having founded Twitchy. Michelle has written a new book called Open Borders, Inc., Who's Funding America's Destruction? And we'll talk about the book in a little bit, but I want to get to Michelle first and talk about an event that is occurring this weekend at an ICE detention facility in Aurora, Colorado. So let's welcome Michelle Malkin. Here we go. So we got Michelle on the line. Michelle, good to talk to you again. How you been?
Good. How about you? I've been busy.
Same here. I like that. Just cut to the chase. I'm fine. I'm busy. Same here. Okay. Let's talk about. There is an event that you are organizing, and are you also hosting it?
Yes.
So you're going to be out there.
Yes. I'm diverting my book tour to be able to get back there in time because I think it is that important.
You're such a troublemaker. I love it. So tell me about the event. Tell me the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why.
Saturday, September 21st, 11 a.m., 3130 Oakland Street, Aurora, Colorado. That is the address of the Aurora ICE facility that's run by Geo Group. They are under fire by many of the Soros-subsidized Open Borders, Inc. entities that I have been reporting on in my columns and my latest book. They have announced that they're going to march from downtown to the ICE facility. Many of these individuals were present in July when they laid siege to the facility and tore down the American flag, replacing it with a Mexican flag and a defaced Blue Lives Matter flag. I believe that it is time for people to get off the sidelines if they are enraged by such acts. Put themselves out there, show their faces, raise their voices, raise their American flags. And this will be the second time that we are back there because we mobilized on a dime for Labor Day and turned out some 200 plus people to show their support and stand with ICE.
Explain to me, because I can recall, and again, now this is going on, 13, 14 years now, but I can recall going to a couple of ICE detention facilities around the country as the undersecretary, and I have to say that I actually found them to be no different than any other detention facility. It's a place to house people who have come to the country illegally, so they have trespassed, they have committed a crime, and they're being housed. There's medical care available. I never saw anything in my 5-6 years as the undersecretary that would indicate to me that these are some sort of horrific facilities.
Exactly, and yet that's the propaganda that's being applied every day under the Trump administration by the anti-Trump resistance, the abolish ICE forces who liken these clean and safe and well-run facilities to quote-unquote concentration camps. I have also toured the Aurora ICE facility, and I will be heading to other ones as well, whether they're privately run or run by the government. These are facilities where not just your ordinary border trespassers, but many hardened serial illegal alien criminals are detained to protect and serve everybody else in the community. And many of these detainees enjoy such amenities as ping pong, indoor gyms, 3 square meals a day, telepsychiatry appointments, free access to LexisNexis.
Oh, whoa. Just stop right there. Free access to LexisNexis?
Yes, there are special pods that are dedicated at the Aurora ICE facility. And, of course, conveniently, these services are available in foreign languages, primarily Spanish, but not exclusively Spanish.
Now, I am naturally a smart aleck, so I guess instead of paying my monthly fee to LexisNexis to do all my research and everything, I need to cross the border illegally so I can get that free.
Yeah, and it is no joke. It is somewhat prohibitively expensive, especially for independent journalists who don't have corporate media employment.
I mean, I was listening to everything that you were listing off of the amenities, and I'm please don't take offense to this, but I'm listening and I'm thinking, I know that, and then I hear LexisNexis, and I almost got whiplash.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have these reality checks, because the more incitement of violence and the inflammatory rhetoric that we're hearing and seeing, the more endangered these ICE employees and the contractors that worked for GEO, for example, have become. And in fact, this week, some of these agitators are marching to the private home of the warden as a result of postings on Facebook, which have been allowed to essentially incite violence. And I contacted Facebook this week asking them about why it is that these groups are allowed to post while many peaceful, patriotic, pro-immigration enforcement advocates have been kicked off the platform. There's an incredible double standard when it comes to these groups defining what quote-unquote hate speech is, while ICE facilities are literally now under fire.
Now, I don't know if this is a perfect analogy or not, but in terms of doxing, marching to the home, the residence, the private residence of the warden, in Colorado, as you well know, we've had a warden that has been murdered. And if as we both know, these facilities house some hardened criminals, MS-13 or other type of gang members. If we do this kind of indirect kind of doxing, we're actually putting that warden and any other warden that they might march to, we're putting them and their families physically in danger.
No question about it. And the history of what happened with the assassination of the former executive director of the Colorado Department of Corrections is very relevant in this context. And I also think that you have to look at the national scene. When you have the New York Times, which is mimicking what these local groups did with their targeting of the warden, running op-eds that are explicitly calling for doxing ICE employees and their families. I've documented ensconced academic professors who are responsible for releasing doxing information, open source online. These are clear incitements to violence, and yet the left and the Open Borders Inc. types are always turning it around and accusing us of quote-unquote inciting violence merely for advocating enforcement of the laws that are on the books. If these people don't like what's happening with ICE facilities or contractors, go march on Washington and protest what's going on in Congress and get the laws changed instead of subverting and sabotaging them.
So now you've got my blood pressure up about another issue that I want to ask you about, and that is, and I want to, it's a two-part question. First, I guess, from a lawyer's point of view, when I hear about taking down an American flag and raising, what'd you say? They had two other flags they put up,
Mexican flag
and defaced blue lives. So to do that, you have to be on federal property to do that. Is that not trespassing? And is that not I would think, in a liberal interpretation of the statute, that is not only trespassing, but that is vandalism of a federal facility. Does the U.S. attorney have no interest in this whatsoever?
So I don't know about that. Now, this facility, of course, is a privately run one by GEO, but it's trespassing on private property nonetheless. and of course the vandalism aspect of it. So then you ask yourself, well, where were the local police? And, we've seen in many of these sanctuary cities, counties, and jurisdictions, whether it's de facto or de jure sanctuary, that unfortunately rank and file police officers have their hands tied behind their backs or gags on their mouths about being able to communicate with local police about immigration status and matters. And so these stand-down orders themselves endanger everybody, whether it's, other law enforcement or citizens who happen to be peaceably assembling, as is their constitutionally protected right. We've seen what's happened in the Pacific Northwest in Portland. A friend of mine who was an independent journalist, Andy No, was beaten.
Oh, and the Andy story is horribly sad and irritating. It makes me angry.
While police stood by. Now, I've always been a great supporter of law enforcement, and I have many law enforcement sources, ICE and DHS. They're just as frustrated, the ones who are committed to protecting and serving, about what's going on here. And I think in this case, I think it behooves the Aurora powers that be to understand that they have a larger role in cooperating with federal immigration officials to keep people safe instead of undermining their ability to protect and serve.
So I want to get your take on, so the second part of my question was this. I want to get your take on the raising of the Mexican flag, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm making, and this is probably a big ass assumption on my part, but I'm making an assumption that a lot, if not the majority, of those housed in the detention facilities are those who have come from the Central American countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, versus the majority of them actually being from Mexico. Now, that may be correct or incorrect, but if the majority are from Central American countries, what's the significance of raising the Mexican flag?
Yeah, so, a lot of the radical identity politics groups that have prevailed in the immigration public square are sort of Mexican nationalists, and they have sort of like the granddaddy status. We saw this in 2006 and 2007 during the Bush years, the raising of the Mexican flag at post offices and in public school campuses, on college campuses. That very militant idea of Reconquista and Azatlan, the National Council of La Raza, but in many cases they've been supplanted by other, the left idea is one now of intersectionality, right?
Right.
That there are far more different types of groups that are speaking up. But to address your question about who's actually in these facilities, prior to the latest surges of the illegal alien caravans, before Trump came into office, I think it's something like upwards of 80% of the people were serial illegal alien criminal offenders from all around the world. And even when I toured there were illegal alien offenders from Africa, from parts of Eastern Europe, from Asia, from India. So people have to realize that because there are all these magnets and pull factors, and everybody knows that if you can make it across the southern border, it'll be catch and release for you and you're home free. Word is spreading around the planet about this, and that's a huge danger. It's got huge national security implications, especially when you've got these transnational groups and drug cartels that do work with many Islamic jihadic organizations. They have mutual interests.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you that from my days of visiting, for example, the El Paso Information Center and others, that I've always been concerned, and I don't know why people don't understand that illegal immigration is, in fact, a national security issue. They just, for whatever reason, refuse to accept that notion.
Yes, exactly. And it's a message that I have been hammering since I wrote Invasion in 2002, and it extends all the way into my latest book, Open Borders, Inc., which traces all the money that's fueling this racket. So
let me, and I have a theory, but I'm actually more interested in your theory. What's your theory about why this facility and why now?
Well, in large part, these are groups that are united behind one agenda, and that is denying President Trump re-election. The fact is that 5 years ago, many of these facilities were accepting people who were coming across during the surges under the Obama administration. And that's when you saw this false recycling of these horrific pictures of kids in cages passed off as, Trump's doing, when in fact these were done under Jed Johnson when he was DHS secretary, and nobody cared. I was breaking stories in 2014 about the flights that were taking place from the southern border into places like Boston Logan Airport or Fort Sill in Oklahoma, and people accused me of making it up. So, a lot of false propaganda and selective concern about what goes on in these facilities.
Okay, so one last, the old adage, you got to tell people what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. So be sure and remind me and remind everybody listening. Tell me about the event again, how they can get involved, what do they need to do, where do they show up? I mean, all the deets. I need all the deets about it. Yes,
go to michellemalkin.com. My latest 2 blog posts will give you all the information. Saturday, September 21st, 11 a.m., 3130 Oakland Street, Aurora, Colorado. If you are on Facebook, you can go to my Facebook event that invites people. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who have already committed to coming, and it will give you more information about parking and logistics. There'll be special VIPs and speakers, and the anticipation of the arrival of the other side at the ICE facility is somewhere around noon, but we will be having patriotic gatherings and testimonies from people who've been negatively affected by open borders.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck. We'll get this out on all the podcast platforms. We'll get it out on terrestrial radio, and we'll try to get the word out for you. So, Michelle, good luck, and God bless you. I really appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate it. I think it's time for people to get off the sidelines, stand with ICE, and stand for American sovereignty, and I'm so grateful for your help in spreading the word, Michael.
Amen. Thank you. As an example of just how badly I think sometimes immigration is dealt with in this country, a now retired federal immigration judge has been fined and barred from federal service for 2.5 years because she was found to have violated the Hatch Act by promoting then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's immigration plan back during a 2016 deportation hearing. It wasn't that she went out and talked somewhere about immigration publicly. She's entitled to her opinion. Now, she might still come close to a violation of the Hatch Act. But the Office of Special Counsel in the Department of Justice said this week that Carmen Jaja de Pola, a former immigration judge that was employed by the Department of Justice, who, as I said, has since retired, has been reprimanded and disciplined by an administrative law judge on behalf of the Merit Systems Protection Board. She was fined the maximum possible penalty. I know it's $1,000, but she was given a 30-month debarment from federal service. Now, the Office of Special Counsel filed this complaint against her in 2018. They accused her of violating the Hatch Act. For those of you, no details here, but the Hatch Act generally prohibits federal employees from engaging in political activity while on duty or while in a federal workplace. The special counsel said, we're very pleased with the outcome of the case. We believe the significant disciplinary action imposed by the judge is appropriate and warranted. I don't think so. I think if you actually tout a political candidate's immigration plan during an immigration hearing, I think that warrants more than a $1,000 fine and a 30-month debarment from federal service. I think that precludes you from ever serving in federal service again. Now, the judge called the punishment a pretty harsh thing and said that Clinton intended to change that if she won. Now, if Democrats won the Senate, she said at the time there's some hope that they can actually pass immigration legislation. Well, we know that didn't happen. According to the Office of Special Counsel, She also said the Republicans aren't going to do anything about immigration if they can help it, other than they're going to try to deport everybody. Imagine that you're in a courtroom, an immigration courtroom, and the judge is saying things like this while you're just trying to get a fair hearing. Now, obviously, if you come here, if you're in a deportation hearing in an immigration court, and the judge is talking about, well, I hope she wins because then the Republicans, blah, 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 that totally politicizes that deportation hearing. And you know what it does? It actually raises the idea, certainly does in my head, and I hope it does in your head, that courtrooms are becoming partisan. And that judges are starting to consider political platforms when they're talking to the litigants in front of them. The very nature of her offense politicizes the judiciary. And it politicizes the federal workforce, and it actually militates toward a more severe sanction, in my opinion. She served as a judge in the Otay Mesa Immigration Court in California. They say she's now retired. The website at federalpay.org said that she was making an annual salary of about $172,000, $173,000. This politicizing, as I said on the radio yesterday in yesterday's podcast, this politicizing everything. Once the courts start getting politicized, we're going to lose it all. We're going to lose it all because judges are supposed to be apolitical. They're supposed to look at the facts as are presented to them, facts which may be conflicting. If they're acting as the jury is the one that makes the determination of which facts to believe or not believe, who to give credibility to or not to. But if a judge is also acting as the jury, if the judge happens to be the decision maker, they have to set all that aside. They have to look at the facts. They have to weigh the credibility of the witnesses. And then they have to apply the law to those facts that come out in the courtroom. And if they then make a decision not based on the law, but based on what they want the law to be or think the law should be or what they hope the law will be, depending on whether or not their candidate wins, and this goes for people on both sides of the aisle, that politicizing of the judiciary will make us no better than a banana republic. That's why I think immigration is such an illegal immigration. And what everybody is doing in terms of trying to infiltrate the court systems, trying to infiltrate the judicial system, I think it is. It is an existential threat to the future of this republic. Hyperbole? I don't think so. Do you want to go in front of a judge who's going to make a decision based upon their politics or based upon the law? I know what judge I want, one that bases a decision upon the law. So thanks for listening to this special edition of Michael Brown Unplugged. I hope you will help Michelle Malkin out with her protest at the Aurora ICE detention facility this Saturday. And while I'm at it, let me just remind you that she also has a book out, Who's Funding America's Destruction? Open Borders, Inc. You can find it on Amazon, wherever books are sold. Michelle Malkin's Open Borders, Inc. Who's Funding America's Destruction? It's 500 pages. I'm not through it completely yet. But here's what I find fascinating about it. 12 appendices, maps that trace tens of billions of dollars that have been spent or received by more than 400 nonprofits, religious charities, legal organizations, political lobbying groups, businesses, government contractors, and, I know this sounds dry, but she backs it up with more than 1,500 footnotes. If you want the facts, get Michelle's book, Open Borders, Inc. Who's Funding America's Destruction? Thanks for listening to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. You know the drill. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever by going to michaelbrowntoday.com, or you can also follow us and subscribe to us on the iHeart app or on iTunes. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you tomorrow.